JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about long-range shooting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the real common stuff that I use when I go to the range to do long-range shooting. And, you know, when we're talking about long-range shooting, we're talking about 500 to 1,000 yards or whatever. Some people might say that's intermediate range. I don't know. You know, there's that extreme long-range stuff. But I've just recently been getting into it. So I've kind of been working out, you know, my kit and figuring out what I need to take, what I don't need to take, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll look a little bit at some of that stuff. We will also go over what is in this month's battle box, which is also related to long-range shooting as well. So it kind of works together. So with that, I will say that the two biggest resources that I have used in my journey to learn about long-range shooting and, you know, ballistics and all that kind of stuff is one, the YouTube channel Tibosaurus Rex. Rex has a whole series of videos called Sniper 101 where he's literally got like 101 videos in that playlist. If you guys are interested in learning about long-range shooting, I highly recommend that you watch that whole thing. Ton of information in there. I mean, really, really good stuff. I've been taught a lot about close range shooting, you know, and what I would say intermediate distance, you know, 300-400 yards and stuff like that. But at that closer range, there's really not a lot that goes into it. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Once you get past, you know, 500, 600, 700, 800 yards out to 1,000 or whatever, it starts to get a lot more complicated, and there's a lot of more factors that really start to go into it. And Rex talks a lot about that in his whole series there, so it's definitely a good series. The other resource that I've used is Ryan Kleckner's book on the basic fundamentals of long-range shooting, and that actually comes in this month's battle box. I had bought a copy of it right beforehand. I ended up giving the copy that I bought to a friend, and I have the copy that came in this month's battle box in my truck at work because I've been reading through it. It's a very basic book, but it's got a lot of good stuff in there that if you didn't know, you wouldn't, you know, you just wouldn't know to know about it, I guess, unless you read through it. So with that, let's go ahead and I'll just run through some of the stuff that I take to the range here real quick. Obviously a good set of earmuffs is good. These are Walker game ears. They've got mics on either side, and then they cut out the sound. But it also helps for you to determine if you got hits at distance, because sometimes, you know, the steel doesn't ring as good as it should or whatever, and it's just a thud, or, you know, maybe you didn't see the splash from when it hit or something like that. And having a good set of electronic ear protection I think it's helpful. So I like that. Another thing that's important is a torque wrench set for when you're setting your rifle up. This is by Wheeler. They call it the Fat Wrench, and I'll put Amazon links to all this stuff down below if it's something that you think you want to pick up or whatever. I definitely appreciate it if you use the links. But a torque wrench is a pretty important piece of kit for setting your rifle up, for putting on your scope mounts, the base, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's good to follow the manufacturer's recommendations and the torque settings so that everything is, you know, correct. It also gives you just, you know, bits, you know, a good bit set and everything that you can use for tightening and loosening things, changing things out, you know, whatever the case may be. Another good device is a scope leveling kit. Let's see if you can see that. It's just a little bubble level with a magnet on it, and then another little level to set on top of the scope. And basically the way that this works is you're gonna kind of put that on there, and then you would put the bubble level, you know, on a flat place wherever you can. Another good method for getting your scope trued up, and actually probably the best method, is to use a plumb bob, where you hang a plumb bob down, you get back on the rifle, and you level everything up so that it is truly level. You just want to make sure that your rifle is level and your scope is level and everything is true with the plumb bob. That becomes critically important, especially once you get out past 500 yards, because if you have cant in your rifle, either way, that can cause you to shoot, low left, low right, whatever the case may be. So you really want to make sure, you want to spend a lot of time making sure that you got your scope on and that it's on perfectly level and the gun is level and everything else like that. Let's see, on my rifle here, I'll just talk real quick about it. It is a Remington 700 with the Magpul Hunter stock. So it's aluminum bedded, free floated barrel. It has the heavy barrel on it. I also put on a compensator. This is the APA little bastard. It's supposed to give a 40% reduction in recoil, and it did seem to reduce it quite a bit. Although 6.5 Creedmoor, that's what this is in, doesn't have a lot of recoil, to begin with. But this gun so far for me has been shooting about 5/8 inch groups, so a little over a half MOA, and that is with oh, that's upside down for you, I guess, but that was with several different kinds of match grade ammo. And there's a few flyers on there where that was just my bad shooting, but the groups came out pretty good, and it held pretty consistent on paper out at 300. I shot the same thing, or shot also, and it was about 1 7/8 inch at 300, so not terrible. The one thing that I don't like about this setup, this gun, is that the X Pro trigger from Remington is really not that good. It's very crisp. It's really, really crisp. It's supposed to be adjustable down to 2.5 pounds, I think, but mine will not adjust any lower than 5 pounds. So shooting those groups is with a 5-pound trigger. I thought that was okay. I'm gonna order a Timney trigger and set it for somewhere around 2.5 to 3 probably. I think that I will probably be able to tighten up those groups a little bit. As far as the scope goes, I have an SWFA straight 16 power scope. That's the SWFA Super Sniper. These scopes are actually really, really good scopes for the money. It was only a $300 scope. And I'll talk more about that in a separate video, because I've learned something recently about scopes that I just never really thought about before, and I have a lot of different kinds of scopes and different kinds of reticles and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's a real value in once you learn how to use a tactical style scope with a mil dot reticle. I prefer the mil so that the reticle is mil dot and the turrets are also adjusted in mils. I think it makes a lot of sense to make sure that all your scopes and all your different rifles are all set up the same way. But that's just a personal thing for me that I'm going to be changing, and I'll talk more about that in a different video. Also have a sling on the rifle, and then I have an Atlas bipod on here as well. And I started with a cheap Firefield, it's kind of like a Harris knockoff or whatever, and wasn't happy with that at all. This Atlas bipod is really expensive. It's like $300, but it's really good too. It definitely makes the gun more stable, and I really like it a lot. Okay, so that's pretty much it on that rifle. That's all I can think of anyway. The other things that are important, just picked this up myself. This is a chronograph, and I want to say it was like $170 or something like that. It's a barrel mounted ballistic chronograph, and the reason that this is important is that when you start using your scope to dial in your come-ups and elevation and all that kind of stuff, then you need to really know what your particular ammunition is actually exiting your barrel at. You have to know what that velocity is, because basically all the other ballistics and everything like that depend on that kind of accuracy, on that figure being correct. So, you know, if you look at, say, match grade ammo for the 6.5 Creedmoor, maybe it would say 2,680 feet per second or 2,700 feet per second or something like that. But it may actually shoot shorter than that, because the test barrel for, if you know, for the length of that may have been 24 inches on, you know, for the at the factory, but maybe you have a 22-inch barrel, or maybe you have a 26-inch barrel, or whatever the case may be. So it could vary. So you really need to be able to check your bullet speed and know what that is for the ammo that you're using in your gun. Now there's a lot of other variables in this, and I'm not gonna cover it all, but that's a pretty basic one that you want to know. I also picked up a just a Wheeler trigger pull scale, just because I was curious when I was trying to adjust this, and it seems to work just fine. But yeah, you don't want to have too light of a trigger pull. That's another thing. I personally would recommend not going probably below 1.5 pounds or something right in that range, because it gets too light, it can be dangerous, you know. So you can fire when you don't actually mean to, because you're just resting your finger on their stuff. I have a CZ, what is it, the 527 carbine in 7.62x39, and it has a single set trigger on it that's right about 1.25 pounds or so, and it's, man, you really got to be careful with that thing. I mean, it's just easy to get that thing to go off. So another thing that you might want to have for long range shooting is a data book. Basically just a book that will allow you to kind of, you know, keep record of all of your shot data, your dope. DOPE stands for data on previous engagements. You know, it allows you to start recording that stuff. I haven't done a whole lot with this yet, because I need to figure out what actually is important to keep track of. So I'm gonna you know, keep looking into that and figuring out what I need to do there. I probably have close to 400 rounds with this rifle already, and I've only had it a couple of months. So I've gone through quite a bit on it. Another thing that is important to have is a shooting mat. The reason that I think you should have a shooting mat is because it is important. If you're always going to just be shooting from a bench, then you could sight it in and all that kind of stuff from a bench. For me, I got this gun because I'm a prepper, and I want to be able to hunt with it. I want to be able to use it for long-range defense. I want to be, you know, whatever the case may be. So when I was going through and harmonically tuning the rifle, figuring out which rounds actually work best for it, I wanted to shoot it in the position that I was most likely going to be shooting it. And so that's, you know, from the prone position, because that kind of just makes sense. So having a nice shooting mat is good. This one is from One Tigris, and it was very reasonably priced, and it is very comfortable. It has some non-slip pads on it. It's got a lot of padding in it, and it's actually a really, really nice little shooting mat. So again, I'll put some links down in the description below on that. Another thing to have in your bag is or to have in your equipment is different size sandbags. You know, having some sandbags, if you don't have a bipod, you know, a bigger one like this is good. If you're gonna, you know, rest the toe of the gun, you want to also rest that on a sandbag if at all possible, to help you be more stable. And I think this month's Battle Box has one of those in there too, which is great. But having some different sandbags, sand socks, and stuff like that to help get your gun stable is important. This one I filled with poly beads, and again, I'll put the links down in those. It makes it just a little lighter, but it's also nice and adjustable and very stable as well. Okay, so for wind, the two biggest factors that are going to affect your shot are wind and gravity. And so having just a little bit of chalk just kind of they call it the windicator. You just kind of squirt it up in the air and it kind of shows you which direction the wind is blowing. And then having an anemometer is also good. This is not a super high quality one. It is, I would say, just a mid-range one. It's a Caldwell. They do, like, Kestrel is probably the best out there, and they have, you know, complete, like, ballistics stuff. They'll gather the atmospheric pressure, they'll gather you know, the elevation and all kinds of stuff. So those are pretty expensive, though. They can get up to more than $1,000, but they have some lower model version ones that are, you know, I think somewhere around 100 or 200 as well. This one I think was about 75 or so from Caldwell. It seems to work okay. I don't know that it's necessarily the best. This stuff's super cheap. Really, when it comes to wind, learning how to read the wind and just practicing enough so that you can kind of see the wind, you can read the mirage, you know, those kinds of things are really probably the most what you really want to use for field and tactical applications and stuff like that. On that note, it's some people say that it's a good practice, and I happen to agree with it, that you don't dial in your windage with your side elevation, and that is to mean that you don't dial in the actual wind. The other effects like Coriolis effect and spin drift and all that kind of stuff, you can dial that in because that's not going to change a whole lot. But your wind, your actual wind, it changes so frequently that it doesn't make sense to dial that in. It actually makes sense to use the reticle, which is why I like to use a mil style reticle personally. Okay, so another thing is a good laser rangefinder. This one's okay. This is a Cabela's. It's an old one that I had from bow hunting, so it only goes out to like 600 or 700 meters or something like that. But having a good laser rangefinder is good. If you're going to be shooting out, you know, past 1,000, then you probably want to get one that's rated for like a mile, because this one's rated for 1,000, but it only actually goes 600 or 700. So make sure that you get a laser rangefinder that is rated for more distance than what you anticipate shooting at. That would be my recommendation. So I'd like to get another one of those here before too long. Okay, another one is a good bore snake. You know, after you put, you know, so many rounds through your rifle, it might be a good idea to run a bore snake through it, make sure that it's clean, you know, and that kind of stuff. I probably only run this through after every 40 to 60 rounds or something like that. And that seems to keep it fine to where it's, you know, shooting pretty consistent and whatnot. But I like a bore snake. I like those better than the rods. It's not that the rod's going to hurt it or tear it up necessarily. It's just easier to do. I put some, you know, some CLP or cleaner on there on the snake, let it soak in, and then run it through. It's also got the wire brush, you know, kind of built in. It's just really nice and easy. Works really well. Especially if you're shooting with someone else, you may want to have a spotting scope or a good set of binoculars for being able to call their hits, you know, and help them out with where they need to adjust and all that kind of stuff. Again, having a spotting scope with the same style reticle that the scopes that you're shooting have is also helpful, because then you can call out the distance in the same unit of measurement. As you guys know, probably know, most of you guys, there are two basic kinds of measurements. There is milliradians, and then there is also MOA, or minute of angle. To me, it doesn't make any difference which one you use. For my no math doing brain, the mil dot or milliradian system is much easier because it's all divided by 10. It's all doing math in tens. Whereas MOA, minute of angle, is more fractions and different things, and it's just a little bit harder. There is about a 1 inch difference at 1,000 yards in accuracy, where the MOA is actually just a little bit more precise, like I said, about 1 inch at 1,000 yards. So the difference between the two as far as accuracy is pretty much, you know, not even a big deal for most people, because if you're shooting, you know, down to 2 inch groups or whatever at 1,000 yards, you're far surpassing most people. So okay, so that's pretty much the basics of this, you know, the majority of stuff aside from ammo and that kind of thing that I take out to the range. So with that, let's go ahead and look at this month's battle box and see how, you know, what else they add to this, you know. Okay, so the first part is the shooting handbook, the long range shooting handbook by Ryan Kleckner. Like I said, I have that in my truck right now, so I'll throw up a picture for you guys to take a look at. That comes in the box, and it is a very good book. It's basic, and it starts basic, but it gives you the fundamentals of pretty much everything you need to understand about tactical shooting and long range shooting to get you started. So I think that's an awesome addition into this kit, into this, you know, adding to your stuff here. Okay, the next one is some Spartan accuracy grease. Just a little tub of accuracy grease, kind of to use, you know, on your the main points on your rifle that need lubricated and stuff like that. I haven't added any to this one yet, but I will definitely do that because it's been a little while since I've lubed up the bolt and stuff. So that's pretty cool. All right, the next one is rifle cheek rest with admin pouch. This is pretty cool because a lot of this is made so that it fits on your rifle's buttstock, just like that. Now I actually have a raised buttstock, so that, well, I wouldn't need it on this particular rifle, but my Mossberg MVP in 308, actually I have one of these already on it. So these are very useful. You can put it on there, and you can you know, you can adjust the height of, let's see, I believe you can adjust the height also to specifically fit. Yeah, you can pull it apart, and then you can adjust. It's got foam inside of here, so you can take that foam out and make it a different height so that it fits personally just for you. And the reason you want that is because when you're shooting at distance, you want to make sure that you have the same cheek weld each time that you put your face down on the gun. Consistency is everything, and if you read that book, that's what Ryan Kleckner talks about. So you really want to make sure that you have your cheek down, you know, as low as possible, you know, so that it's getting a nice good cheek weld on your cheekbone there, and it's consistent each time. If you're not doing that and you're having to hold your head up because your scope rings are a little higher, you know, maybe because it had to clear the bolt or because you've got a larger objective lens or whatever the case may be, then you're going to suffer in accuracy greatly. And I'm talking like when I was first sighting my MVP in, man, it was terrible. I was at like 100 yards, I was shooting like 6-inch groups. And it's because I wasn't getting a good cheek weld. I mean, it was just all over the place. And so this is actually a really important thing to have if you don't have a way to build up your stock. So that's pretty cool also. And the next thing here is shooting rifle rest. So this is what I was talking about. This is a different style. This is a sandbag, or similar to like a sand stock that you would place, you know, down here at the toe of the rifle, and then you would let the gun kind of rest. Let me show you. So you would want to go ahead and set it like this, and that gives you a nice sturdy platform for you to get down on the rifle. Okay. And it's gonna allow the gun to sit still, and then you can adjust it up or down based on, you know, pulling this the 2 feet on the sandbag apart, and then you kind of just hold it with your hand. It's a lot more stable to use a stock or a sand stock of some sort on the toe of the gun rather than trying to hold your hands in. You know, a lot of people will get in and try to use their arms and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine for a field expedient method, but it's not anywhere near as stable as using a sock. So if you can, I highly recommend that you do that. Okay, so again, another great little addition, and that's all in the basic box. The next thing in the advanced box is going to be the Real Avid gun tool. This is a pretty cool little tool. I used it just the other day, as a matter of fact, because I was looking for a tool and I didn't have one. So it's called the gun tool, and it just has a lot of different bits and blades and different things on it. Torx heads, Allen heads, punches. You've got several different options on that one. That's a shotgun, a flathead screwdriver, and then a shotgun. What's it called? Choke wrench. Thank you. And then we've also got some other Allen heads and Torx heads on that side. You've got a 1/4-inch bit driver here in the end. Got some different bits, 1/4-inch bits and stuff. I mean, this is just a pretty cool little tool to throw in your range bag, so that you've got some different options when it comes to working on and adjusting stuff and all that kind of thing. So that's pretty sweet. Then we also have a basic rifle cleaning kit. Comes in coyote brown. It's got a some Molly webbing or Pals webbing on there. And let's see what we got inside. Quite a bit of stuff. So we got, looks like it's basically kind of like an M16 or AR-15 style cleaning kit. You got your 22 caliber brush, you got your AR-15 bore brush, got some patches, your little cleaning toothbrush, and a little bottle as well. And then you've also got a few other things in here. And let's see what else we got. Oh, we got several different picks. Plastic picks for cleaning out, the little nooks and crannies. We got some long Q-tips, and then we have a cleaning rod as well. One that screws together. I'm getting some rain outside right now. Okay, so that's a pretty cool little kit. Definitely a good thing to have in the range bag, especially if you're shooting an AR-15 or something that might get a little dirtier than like a bolt action rifle or whatever. So that is pretty cool too. And that is it for the advanced box. So for the Pro, they have this bag that I've been leaning over here. It's a 9-line apparel, a dual rifle case. So it's got a nice little padded section here in the center. You put a carbine on one side. It's got your straps, for holding it in place. And then you can have another one on the other side. We've got 3 big pockets here. And then it's got backpack straps on the back and a nice big carry handle, all from 9-line. So this is pretty sweet. This is a pretty sweet little bag. It's not quite large enough for most bolt action rifles like this one, but it's going to work pretty well for like your carbine size AR-15s and stuff like that. So that is pretty cool, because I was actually looking for one of these recently, and it's nice to have a double bag where you can throw 2 guns in it and still keep them safe, because it's got that padding in between, so you don't have to carry 2 separate cases when you go to the range or whatever the case may be. So I thought this was really neat. I thought that was a really cool addition to this month's box. They really have been doing a pretty good job so far, I think. Let's see, Knife of the Month Club. Where got that bad boy at? I got it hidden in here somewhere. Here we go. Knife of the Month Club, I believe it comes from Sniper Blade Works. This is the DMF folder in 1095 high carbon steel. So it's got a cool little case that it comes in. And here is the blade in there. Let me pull this thing out. This is a beast of a blade. it's a frame lock. Got a nice big pocket clip on the back side there. Again, 1095 steel, and it's just heavy, thick and heavy, and just a really cool knife. I may have to EDC this for a little while and see how I like it. It's got kind of a finger choil up front where you can, really grip onto it, but that's just a really pretty knife. It's got kind of a copper color to it, and then it's got some carbon fiber inset scales. And I think this is probably an aluminum body if I had to guess, but it's got a copper color to it. Man, and it's kind of a stone washed finish on the blade. That's neat. I like that. So anyway, that is all that is in the battle box this month. And I think it's some great items for long range shooting. I think they did a good job on the theme here. And like I said, I was reading that book when they had sent this out, and it's a good book. There's a lot of information in it, and for preppers, I think it's important to learn to shoot longer ranges. And the reason I say that is because it just gives you a bigger advantage when you start talking about being able to defend yourself, operating in a tactical kind of situation, all that kind of stuff. Having the ability to shoot long range gives you more options, and that could be more options when it comes to home defense. It could be more options when it comes to negotiating checkpoints and roads. I've been thinking about doing a video on that. It could be just hunting options, procuring game at further distances. There's just a lot of different reasons and why it could become important to shoot at long range. So, I think I forgot to tell you there. I also have a little vortex scope level on here as well. That's also important to make sure that you don't have any cant in your gun. So I kind of spaced that. But anyhow, we've got a lot of different videos coming out. I don't know if you can see this thing right here. This is the Deep Recon G1 from Hardened Power Systems. I've got the little Midland 40 watt radio, GMRS radio in that. That's going to be a video we're going to be doing here pretty soon. This is a really cool little system, and with some of the different GMRS options that are coming out, I'm leaning more and more towards using that as my kind of prepper communication system. So we'll talk more about that in another video. I also have a video coming out on the Olight R50 Seeker. This is a great little flashlight. It's 2,500 lumens, and being able to own the night is a really important thing from a prepper perspective. And along that same lines, I've got a video coming out on the Armasight Core, or Armasight Spark Core, which is a night vision device. And like I said, being able to own the night and operate in the nighttime and everything like that is important. And there are some good options out there that are pretty affordable, pretty affordable. Not extremely affordable, but pretty good. I think that Armasight comes in at around $450, and you may have to save a little while for that for some folks, but it's a really important tool. And so we're going to have a video that talks about that, about the importance of night vision and stuff, and how I have my gun set up, my night gun. And then I'll also have a video coming up that is comparing the ATN X-Sight 2 and the Armasight Core, and kind of the differences between the two, the strengths and weaknesses on the two, and all that kind of stuff, because those are probably the two most affordable options out there right now, and there's a big difference between them. There's a lot of different factors that go into that, but anyhow, so yeah, we've got a lot of stuff coming up for you guys. As always, we definitely appreciate it when you click the thumbs up button, when you share it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.